So first speaking, I've got Laura Young, who's from the Marine Conservation Society, is a volunteer and environmental campaigner. Second up, we've got Alex Heel, who's from the Financial Times, who ran a piece on the environmental cost of single-use vapes. Third is Dr. Caroline Johnson, my colleague, and she put forward a 10-minute rule bill on this precise topic. Four, I've got John Dunne, Director General from the UK Vaping Industry Association, who can hopefully get it all right from the other side of the table. And then finally, at number 5, I've got Libby Peake, Head of Resource Policy from the Green Alliance. And so I am going to literally take up no more of your time, and I'm going to hand immediately over to Laura.
Hi, hello everyone, thank you so much, thanks for introducing everyone. It's great to be here. I also love being in London, it's like get a wee tourist day out, I'm down from Dundee, so it's great to be with you all. I'm here to talk about disposable vapes, as we all are, but this is something that 6 months ago I came across while out with my dog on a walk, and I'm an avid litter picker and started coming across what we all now know are disposable vapes. A little bit of show and tell, hope that's alright. These are just a few of the vapes, the single-use disposable vapes that I've been finding while out litter picking, and these represent the millions that are used every single week in the UK, and of course the millions that are being disposed of, and there's loads of problems associated with these. We know that these are electrical devices, they are single use, they're branded as disposable. Once they're finished, you chuck them away. Clearly people don't have much value in them because they're found as litter, ending up in beauty spots, parks, roads, beaches. They also contain a lot of really valuable resources, things like lithium-ion batteries that we could be using for such better things for our journey to net zero and looking for a circular economy, and all of these things are going to waste. It's also really confusing to know how to get rid of them. If something's branded as disposable, what do you think? You think I'm just going to chuck it in the bin. But of course these should never be thrown in the bin. These should be recycled with electrics, but that's not something that's often offered curbside. You might have to go to your recycling centre. Mine is 3 miles away, you need a car and you need a booking slot. So they're not easy to recycle these. And also the lithium-ion battery that is inside these is really dangerous. We now have evidence that there's been house fires, bin lorry fires and waste facility fires because these have ended up getting into the wrong place. And that is something that the waste industry and the fire services in our local councils are really, really concerned about. So these things are a big nuisance. And they're a big problem, but actually there's an easy solution, and that is because there is reusable vaping devices available for people, for adults who are looking to quit smoking. Reusable devices that you can pick your solution, you can recharge it, refill it and have it on the go. So there's lots of problems associated with these. It's the waste, it's the litter, it's the lack of information and the recycling. And we also know that we're not being helped by places that are selling these and with the brands. It's really, really difficult when you go on the websites to find out how you're supposed to get rid of these. It's not easy to find out how to recycle them or where to recycle them, and often retailers are failing to offer us collection points and take-back schemes, which many are actually regulated to do so. So we know that these are a really big problem. I've also been finding really obscure problems to come with these. I was speaking to a garage up in Dundee who now has regular customers coming in because when you run over a vape, it can pop your tyre. He's actually loving it because he's like, oh, I've got all this business for people popping tyres. But ultimately we now have an industry of people needing car repairs because they're running over vapes. And I also had a real horror story come across online when a school teacher was talking about the thousands of pounds worth of plumbing they have had to get done because kids are flushing these down the toilets, and then they're picking out hundreds of vapes out of the schools. And we know that this is a big problem with young people, and I'm sure other speakers are going to talk way more to that. It's also a problem because these are not just sold in supermarkets, in convenience shops. We've had thousands of new shops signing up to sell these. Cafes, hair salons, tanning salons, watch repair shops. So these are really accessible to the wrong people, accessible to young people and non-smokers. But it also means that there's a real lack of regulations being held up in terms of the waste and in terms of the age limits. So these are a huge problem for litter, for waste, for confusing recycling, for risking fires, for risking popped tyres and for getting stuck down toilets in schools. And so it's great that we're having this conversation about what we can do about these. I and many other people strongly believe that we need to have a ban on disposable vapes. That's something that the Scottish Government has put out as an urgent review to work out what the environmental impact of these is. We have Scottish councils now supporting this. I'm waiting for English one. Maybe someone will do that. But we know that these are a really big issue, and we need to encourage people to take up reusable, refillable, rechargeable options to make sure that there's no unintended consequences for young people, which other people will touch on, but also for the environment. I just want to make sure that we set a precedent that says we will not let disposable electronics, fast electronics is a term I want to make, we don't want to make that a thing. Can you think of any other disposable electronic that people use and throw away on a daily basis, on a weekly basis? Exactly. So let's set a precedent, let's make sure that these things get banned and make sure that we help people on a journey away from smoking but in a way that doesn't have unintended consequences.
Cool. Hi, thank you for having me. I'm going to talk through some findings from a story about disposable vapes that Oliver Barnes, my colleague, and I did, published in the Financial Times in March. The first thing I'm going to say though is I've never been a smoker and I've never really vaped. And I bought some disposable vapes for research purposes for this piece. And I thought, well, it's going to be a waste to throw them away without smoking them. So I took them out with me on a night out, and they are absolutely delicious. And I think that is part of the problem here. And it probably explains why a fifth of 15-year-olds are smoking vapes, and why 138 million disposable vapes were sold in the UK last year, which is 2 per person, which is kind of shocking. I'll talk you through our findings on the waste side. So obviously Laura mentioned that they contain lithium, which is a critical raw material, is needed for rechargeable batteries for the transition to net zero. It is in short supply, geopolitical and physical constraints. And we calculated using some great research from Material Focus here, that all of the disposable vapes produced in the world last year, or sold in the world last year, had enough lithium to produce 11,000 electric vehicle batteries. That might not sound like loads, but this is material that is in short supply, and almost all of those would have gone to landfill. So none of that would have been recovered. And we also calculated that they would have contained over 1,000 tonnes of copper, which is enough to make 1.6 million home electric vehicle chargers, which is 1.6 million is a lot. And again, copper may not be in as short supply as lithium, but it is again really critical material for the transition to net zero. And obviously there's massive environmental impacts associated with mining it. So we found that the industry has been very slow to act on recycling these. So I spoke to the 2 biggest electronic recycling plants in the UK. They told me that they each see about 700 vapes a week, not just disposable vapes, but all vapes per week. And so out of the 138 million that are sold a year, that means that these 2 plants are seeing 0.05% of all vapes being sold, maximum. And as I'm sure many of you may know this, but many of you may not, that producers in the UK of electronics are required to fund the recycling of a tonnage equivalent to what they put on the market. Material Focus did some great research that they shared with us exclusively for our piece, that they found that 90% of small disposable vape importers and manufacturers are not registered as they should be legally to be funding this recycling. Which is quite a shocking finding, just mad, and that it's not being enforced. That one of the biggest manufacturers, which is called Green Fun Alliance, which produces Elf Bar and Lost Mary, which account for 70% of the UK disposable vape market, massive chunk. They only registered in November last year because of media pressure, despite having been selling in the UK for 2 years. So whether their kind of funding of the recycling has even started yet, I don't know. And another thing we found, and again speaking to what Laura said, is that retailers have been very slow on the taking back of these products. So retailers since 2021 have been required to take back products like for like to what they sell if they're a major electronics retailer. And I visited, I think, like 8 supermarkets, 2 each of Tesco, Sainsbury's, Co-op and Asda in London. Not one of them said they would take them back. I said, will you take this back if I buy a new one? They said, no, we don't do that. And I asked their press officers, and the press officers said, oh no, we do. We just need to train our staff better. which is kind of mad, given this is legislation that's been in place since 2021, and they've obviously been selling these vapes for a couple of years. And one other point is that even if these retailers were taking it back, some people said to us when we were interviewing them, is it likely that teenagers would even do that? Like, if this is the large part of the target market, a teenager who's hiding from their parents that they smoke a disposable vape is not going to go and put it in their parents' electronic recycling bag, if there even is such a thing in their parents' house. And to kind of, to that point, one scheme, or one kind of vape retailer tried a scheme with 800 shops around the UK to take back these products, and it had less than a 1% take-up rate. So I guess that's a debate as to whether kind of improving the take-back and recycling is going to make a massive difference here, given our track record of recycling small electronics. I will stop there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Selaine. Thank you. So, thank you for inviting me. I did have a 10-minute rule bill just around February time, specifically to ban disposable vapes for two reasons, really. Firstly, the environmental damage that they cause, which I think others have described quite eloquently so far. And secondly, because I'm very worried about the number of children that are taking up vaping. There were 3 children who collapsed in Sleaford in my constituency having vaped and they needed hospital treatment, but thankfully all recovered. And we know that vaping has become very much more popular. And what was designed essentially as a way of stopping smoking has instead become an alternative addiction, which is increasing in popularity. I'm going to talk mostly about the health effects of it today. They contain nicotine. We know that nicotine, I think everyone knows that nicotine is highly addictive. Many people don't recognise that it actually can harm brain development in adolescents. And this is made even worse by the fact that many popular vapes that you find on the high street have been found to contain 20 mils of nicotine, which is about 40 or 50 cigarettes. It's not unknown for a young person, especially place to say that, to go to one in a night out. And in fact, some journalists have recently found that elf bars tested, for example, the Daily Mail investigation, contain between 3 and 3.2 mils of liquid nicotine. The legal limit is 2 mils of 2% strength. So, people are getting through much more nicotine than they think they are and that they should be. There's also been other concerning studies, particularly in America, showing a range of respiratory and coronary conditions, that's heart and lung conditions. In 2019, the University of California in San Francisco found that vaping correlated with increased rates of COPD, so chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, bronchitis, emphysema and asthma. And some studies have shown that e-cigarettes may have similar cardiovascular effects, similar effects on the heart to regular cigarettes. So it's important that we recognise that there are health implications to these products. Unhealthy products on the high street are nothing new. There are lots of unhealthy things you can buy on the high street. And adults are completely free to smoke or vape as they wish. But smoking is subject to strict regulations, and my concern is the number of children that are taking it. The NHS figures in 2022 showed nearly 1 in 10 11 to 15-year-olds vape, and I suspect it's going up even far faster than that now, actually. The steepest trend is in teenage girls, 21% of female 15-year-olds vaping, up from 10%, so it's more than doubled since 2018, so really meteoric rise, really. They're hardly surprising, really, given they're appealing to children that are cheap. They were in them. I was took my son for his haircut on Sunday, and they were selling them at £3 to £10 at the barber shop. They're bright and attractive colours, and they come in flavours like green gummy bear, bubblegum, unicorn milkshake, and strawberry ice cream, obviously all designed to target grown-ups. So what can we do to address this problem? I've got 5 things that I would like to do. I mean, the disposable vape terminal bill for me was just a start, really. Firstly, education. I think we need to educate school children about the potential dangers of vaping, teach them about the negative health effects of it, but also make them aware of marketing tactics that do appeal to children, and make them aware of the cost, long term, of being addicted to something that might be cheap now, but maybe be more expensive if it gets taxed later. Secondly, we need to give vaping advertising, in my view, the same sort of regulations as cigarettes. For me, this means putting warning on packaging, prohibiting type of marketing that you wouldn't allow cigarettes, such as sports teams, sports football shirts, and such things. And I think we should make it clear, in the same way as formula milk makes it clear that it's a follow-on product, we should make it clear that vapes are an aid to help smokers quit, that we're not a lifestyle choice that's a good idea if you're not a smoker already. Thirdly, we think we need to improve regulations for sale. Anyone can sell them. We sell in the barber shop, we sell them, as others have said. Anyone who wants to sell some can sell some. I think we need to make it so you have a licence. I know the industry would probably support that. Challenge 25, so that if people are young, they are challenged on their ID to make sure that they are 18 to buy it, and if they are underage and they're sold it, there should be stiff fines for people who sell them to children. Fourthly, I think we need to ban the disposable vapes as part of the 10-minute rule bill. According to Action on Smoking and Health, the percentage of over 17-year-olds using disposables rather than reusables is particularly high and rising. And I think that by banning the disposable products, we can actually reduce the appeal to children. A reusable device is much harder to conceal from parents, much harder to dispose of from parents, so out of parents or teachers' sight, much harder to hide in a pocket than a reusable one. So it will also, of course, reduce the amount of litter and leaking chemicals in the ground. And finally, I think we should need to have the same regulations for vaping as we have for smoking. So nobody will be sitting in here today having a cigarette, but it isn't unusual to see people vaping in meetings, at dinner tables in restaurants and other places, and we know that will increase the consumption of the nicotine product. It isn't a terribly sociable thing to do. It's an increasing amount of appeal to youngsters because they see people doing it, and it's also meaning that people will consume more product, and people who do not want to consume product will consume product because they're sat next to someone that is. So, in conclusion, I think vaping is a serious health issue that we need to address. I think we need to educate school children, regulate advertising, regulate sales, ban disposable vapes, and introduce regulations for where you can vape to help reduce the negative health as a dangerous habit and protect our children from what I think will, in the long run, could turn out to be very bad for them.
Handing over to John.
Thank you. Well, first of all, let me thank the Environment APPG for giving the opportunity to join today's discussion. As head of the UK's largest vape trade association, now with over 100 member companies, I can speak broadly on the industry, and it's an industry that recognises the major challenges of the environmental impact, especially the issue being that infrastructure and capability has lagged behind a major recent resurgence in the popularity and growth of single-use vapes. The first question we need to ask is, what is the role of vaping in society, and do we want to support that role? Now, research from OHID, the Royal College of Physicians, Cancer Research UK, unanimously says that vaping is the best way to quit smoking, and furthermore 95% less harmful, as stated in the government's own research. Plus simply, vaping is the best chance we have of reducing the huge cost, both human and financial, of smoking. Smoking is responsible for some 76,000 cases of preventable deaths every year, including the deaths of both my own parents. Now that means there will be more than 200 deaths today alone across the country as a result of smoking. And of course, there is more living with debilitating smoking-related illnesses. Furthermore, between 1980 and 2020, hospital admissions in England due to illnesses caused by smoking has risen from 1.3 million to around 2 million. Now compare that to what we know about vaping. Now there has not been one officially reported death from vaping nicotine. Not here, not anywhere in the world. When we talk about recycling, the debate largely centres on disposable or single-use vapes. These products are critical entry points for those smokers considering the switch to vaping, especially amongst those less well off, well over-indexed on smoking prevalence in the first place. Despite this critical social role, we recognise the need to ensure that it is fulfilled while protecting the planet. The solution lies with a number of parties, the industry itself of course, but also retailers, waste companies, as well as consumers and the government. And that's why we brought the parties together last month for a summit to discuss the best ways forward, producing a report entitled The Green Print for Sustainable Vaping, which we launched at an event in Parliament here a couple of weeks ago. Contributors to the discussion included the Environmental Agency, the Office for Product Standards and Safety, the Chartered Institute for Waste Management, and waste management companies, as well as large vape manufacturers who are already innovating with new and more sustainable products. A number of innovative manufacturers, who I'm proud to say are UKVIA members, are making real progress. And, for example, is due to launch a new disposable vape in the UK using materials including cardboard and biodegradable silicone, examples of which I have with me today if anyone wants to see. Another company, S'more, is also unveiling a new product this spring that will reduce plastic waste by 60% and lower carbon emissions by 58%. We know that there is more that can be done to meet environmental challenges of single-use vapes. A number of vape manufacturers and retailers in the UK are talking to waste companies about the best way to collect and recycle single-use vapes, and to better understand what changes can be made in the manufacturing process, materials used to make dismantling and recycling easier. As such, waste management company we've been speaking to is Waste Care, who transformed the portable battery recycling market in the UK through building a network of collection points across the country and raising awareness. A number of vape manufacturers and retailers have developed or are developing similar schemes to collect and recycle vapes. The single-use vapes also face other challenges, and that's youth access to vapes. According to Action for Smoking and Health in their latest report, use among 11 to 17-year-olds who have never smoked remains low and largely experimental, while 7.5% of never smokers have tried e-cigarettes in 2022. The never smokers, only 1.7% reported at least monthly use. While it's still only a small minority, the regular use of vapes by any children using vapes is too much. We've given government a number of recommendations for countering this. Not least, much stronger fines has been brought up already for retailers who sell vapes to children, and a registration scheme and training for retailers who want to sell vapes. There is also further action that we have raised with the government, and that by definition could reduce waste by single-use vapes by 80% at least. Currently, the UK government and EU limit the amount of e-liquid that one can put in a vape to 2 millilitres. There is no particular reason for the level to be this low, more an accident of rushed regulation. There is a limit for the nicotine strength of vapes per millilitre, but this ratio does not change if you allow bigger tanks. For those who use rechargeable vape devices, you can fill up the tank whenever you want, inconvenient but not problematic. With the single-use device though, you only have one option, and that's to throw it away and buy another. By increasing the maximum tank size to say 10 millilitres overnight, you can cut the number of used single vapes by 80%. Furthermore, you take a further step towards discouraging young people by increasing the cost of purchase significantly. It was almost 6 years ago that the government banned packs of 10 cigarettes, and the result was a drop in children smoking of around 17% in the first year alone. But can the industry protect the environment in the same way it's done such a good job of protecting the health of former smokers, and undoubtedly being responsible for saving tens of thousands of lives in the process? Certainly we can, to ensure that the category plays the pivotal role that the CAN review has assigned it to making smoking obsolete. It has to prove that there is a minimal unintended consequences of the growth and use of vapes, including their impact on the environment. And the vaping industry takes this responsibility very seriously, and we look forward to working with the government, the environmental groups, waste companies, consumers, and all interested parties who have a role in ensuring we meet those environmental challenges. Thank you.
Thank you.
And finally, standing down the line, to Libby.
Thank you very much, and thanks everyone for coming. And thanks to all the other speakers for setting out quite clearly on the health and environmental challenges that we're facing. I think it's always hard to go and ask such a large panel. But I just want to focus for a second on the fact that we're talking about disposable vapes, not on vapes in general. And I think that quite often gets lost in the discussion about what we should be banning, what we want to ban. Because as John rightly pointed out, the vaping is a key plank of the government's aim to have a smoke-free generation by 2030. And until a few years ago, that was largely fulfilled by the reusable options. And it's really just in the past few years that out of the blue, these single-use options have come and taken the market share away from the reusables. So if you just look at the latest statistics, if you're looking at young people in particular, who as we've heard, are particularly attracted to these sorts of things, for 11 to 17-year-olds, more than half of people who vape are using disposables, and for the the next cohort up, the 18 to 24-year-olds, it's nearly 50%. It's 48%. That's the latest from the Action on Smoking and Health. And I should point out that that is from almost a year ago now, that data. And if we look at the data that Material Focus recently put out, which has been referenced already, since that time, the disposable vape market has probably doubled, more than doubled. So that means that those stats, as alarming as they sound, are probably much worse now. And so with that knowledge, and based on everything we've heard from the other speakers, I just want to focus in, especially as the Minister for the Environment is now here, and look at the powers that the government already has to ban disposable vapes. They actually have powers in the Environment Protection Act 1990, and I wrote it down. I'm going to read a few things out to you. So it's in section 140, and it's the power to prohibit or restrict injurious substances. And it says that the Secretary of State can, by regulations, do so for the purpose of preventing substance or article from causing pollution to the environment or harm to human health. And I think everything that we've heard today so far points to the fact that this clause was basically made for disposable vapes. It is, I can't think of a better substance to ban based on these powers. And the government has recently been using these powers commendably to ban commonly littered plastic items. So you've probably heard about recently they banned things including plastic cutlery and plates. And in that press release, they said that they were tackling one of the most commonly littered pieces of plastic. Based on a Keep It Tidy survey done in 2020. So that was before there was a big rise in disposable vapes. And so if you're looking at plastic cutlery, it actually makes up less than 0.1% of the litter. That's all litter, not just plastic, all litter. That makes it to the environment. And I don't know the last time anyone in here saw a plastic fork or spoon as they were out walking their dog, but I don't think I've ever seen one. And as we've seen from Laura quite clearly, I see plastic vapes all the time. And if they're made out of cardboard, I'd suggest that might actually even be worse for the environment because it would more quickly deliver harmful substances to the environment if it's littered. So that's a problem that's not going to be solved by that. And the government has said on several occasions that it generally doesn't favour bans. It wants to allow people to use items and to make decisions themselves. But I'm going to read to you something else that I think is crucial for this. In the consultation on banning single-use plates and cutlery, they said that a ban was chosen as a policy measure as it will ensure the desired change and associated environmental benefits are felt quickly and ensure that these are sustained into the future. Also, and importantly, our understanding is that there are viable alternatives. So if we think again about what that clause was written for, I think that was absolutely written for disposable vapes. We know that they're causing harm now to the environment and to children. They're potentially creating a whole new cohort of smokers that will have, vapors who will have potential consequences to their health. And that can be absolutely nipped in the bud right now. So I'm pleased, obviously, that government has recently issued a call for evidence on how to prevent youth vaping, but I think that action is far too slow, and it's going to be ages before we actually see any action on that, when the government has the power already to make the change that we need to see, which is banning these items.
It's an absolute pleasure. Rebecca's just writing her speech, not that she needs notes. But I would just like to say, in defence of the government banning things, we have just banned nitrous oxide. As an MP for Beautiful Beach constituency, I campaigned very hard to make that happen, because anything that can be dropped in my sand dunes is dropped in my sand dunes. And I'm hoping I might have the same success with my disposable barbecues, which is also another campaign of mine. But right now, I'm going to hand over to our fabulous Environment Minister.
She only says that when she knows I'm going to do something that's going to be very helpful.
Excellent.